Oh, Palworld, I always know you had it in you. As you already know, Nintendo has been trying to sue Pocket Pair for a while now. They're trying to use various patents Nintendo owns against Pocket Pair to convince the courts that Palworld cannot reasonably exist. The endgame goal here is that if Nintendo wins their lawsuit, Palworld as a franchise will cease to exist, and then Pocket Pair will be unable to create any further Palworld related content at all in the future, like it will just be gone. Which, let's be real, if that were to happen, Pocket Pair would basically go out of business, and that would be the end of all of this. Which in Nintendo's case, that would be like Christmas Day for them. That's exactly what they want. But unfortunately, there's been a big update, and Nintendo is, well, kind of screwed actually. Originally, I heard this from Insider Gaming as seen here, Nintendo's anti-Palworld patent application gets rejected in Japan. This, in case you don't know, is a big deal if you've been following the story like I have here on the channel. You see, Nintendo issued two specific patents originally anyways to crush Palworld. One was that Nintendo claimed that they owned the right to use balls to capture monsters in games, like a Pokeball, obviously. Secondly, Nintendo claims that they also own the right to riding monsters in games, like a mount if you will. And then more recently, Nintendo issued another patent where they claim that they now own the right to summoning anything basically in a video game. That last one is more of a problem for the wider games industry by the way too, because if so, Nintendo then kind of owns the right to summon help pretty much in literally anything now. Elden Ring Spirit Summon Ashes would be compromised, summoning your friends in Dark Souls would also be removed, and any game practically where you summon help is now wrong, which is like all of Final Fantasy pretty much with their summon magic for example. So if it isn't obvious yet, Nintendo wants to burn down the entire industry to destroy Palworld and remove it from existence because it threatens their crown. But like I said, Nintendo just lost out big time on one of those patents, specifically the patent involving capturing monsters with a ball-like mechanic, which Nintendo, honestly, they likely thought they probably had that one in the bag at least, but according to the Japanese patent offices, Nintendo's patent actually lacked the inventive step needed to secure tangible evidence that they indeed owned the right to capturing monsters in balls. So how did this happen? Well, for Nintendo to actually claim that they own the right to a game mechanic, there is a lot of red tape involved with that. Most notably, it needs to be proven factually that Nintendo was the first to have this idea before anyone else in the industry, which doesn't really work already because obviously Pokemon originally ripped off Shin Megami Tensei when it came to capturing monsters decades ago, which Nintendo was probably hoping that we wouldn't notice, but we did. But other games were actually also used to prove that while Pocket Pair was indeed using, balls to capture their pals, that Nintendo cannot legally force Pocket Pair to remove that mechanic now. So some games used as proof against Nintendo's claims, as Insider Gaming says here, include Ark Survival Evolved, Monster Hunter 4, Pocket Pair's own game Craftopia, which they made obviously before Palworld, Kontai Collection, and even Pokemon Go. But as it says there, this denial is not final. Nintendo can in theory try to reapply it, but based on this very crushing evidence that has been shown, Nintendo is kind of screwed, and it's pretty much cooked if it then tries to push this monster capturing mechanic as some sort of gotcha going forward. This is good news, guys. It means that Nintendo is losing their lawsuit big time here. Need I remind you that Nintendo didn't just apply that one monster capturing mechanic. In reality, what companies with deep pockets like this usually do is they add multiple variants of those same patents with very small distinctions between them in order to cover all of their bases. This way, if one patent fails in court, they can have, say, 5 others that are slightly different that could also in theory now work instead in case any other one fails pretty much. Is this kind of scummy and stupid? Absolutely. But hey, that's corporate warfare for you. These types don't really like competition. And when you're Nintendo with Pokemon, the biggest IP in the world, you really don't want to share that piece of the pie whatsoever with anyone if you can. I will talk a little bit about Pokemon Legends ZA a bit later on in the video too, but let's still focus on Palworld for now, obviously. But this then brings me to GamesFray and the person behind the legal parts of that website, which is someone named Florian Mueller. I've mentioned this person before in other videos about Palworld 2 for a big reason. But here's their very, very extensive article that goes insanely in depth on what exactly is happening now with Palworld and Nintendo given this new patent while failing. So as you can see in this first paragraph that Florian writes, Nintendo is practically trying to smokescreen their entire operation with litigation, and claims that things like mods don't count as art, which is ridiculous, but I covered that story already in another video. And that it's extra hypocritical considering that Nintendo is currently developing a Palworld-like game where it comes to things called Pokopia. I think that's how you say it? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Who cares? But of course, that game existing is totally fine to make, isn't it, Nintendo? And if you want more non-BS content, by the way, on games, please like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, or even become a channel member for $3 a month. It helps a lot, especially with how weird YouTube has been lately. That's putting it lightly, but thank you. But I guess it's fine to copy your competitor. But if they do it to you, well, now I guess that's a big problem now, isn't it? But I think how Florian puts it here is just, it's so deliciously anti-Nintendo, so let's read it. Nintendo now faces the choice between abandoning the embattled patent application or, which is the more likely next step, trying to persuade the patent examiner based on a modified patent application with amended claims. Also, when the process at the patent office is over, an appeal to a specialized court named Intellectual Property High Court is possible. The Japanese patent prosecution process has even been described as an endless loop World Intellectual Property Report. But the fact that the patent examiner is now looking at real-world games as opposed to just patent documents and articles considerably ups the ante for Nintendo. Thank God for that, man. Seriously, finally, like Florian just said, Nintendo has strategically set this up on purpose so that they could, in theory, put Palworld into lawsuit purgatory on like an endless stream of patents until they just run out of money pretty much. Which is, usually how bigger companies do these sorts of lawsuits, by the way. If you're smaller, they just crush you with their wallets pretty much until your funds run out. And then once you have no cash to continue your legal battle, you then just have to settle with whatever the other party's demands are pretty much. Thus, the big fish eats the little fish more often than not. Unfortunately for Nintendo, Palworld, that makes a lot of money still. So that battle can, in theory, continue for a very long time. And once Palworld, exits early access in 2026 especially, I expect a big boom in sales and eyes on it too. Which again, will make Nintendo even more angry. But hey, they need the competition. Because if Legend ZA is anything to go by, the thing that Nintendo needs most when it comes to Pokemon is someone showing them up so that they will level up their game too. What's even more interesting to me is this part here, as you can see, that's highlighted, that Nintendo didn't really push these patents as hard until they were made aware of Palworld's release and the reception around it. Well, that's a little weird, isn't it? They were coasting on by making billions of dollars off of Pokemon, and then what do you mean Palworld sold 8 million copies in a week? On Steam? What? It's like Pokemon with guns? Who are these people? Japan? They're Japanese? Who are they? Get the lawyers, you freaks! We got an empire to destroy. Poor Nintendo. Now they got competition, finally. And now they'll have to face their rivals on a far more leveled playing field, which, knowing Nintendo, they are not gonna like that one bit, guys. But Games Fray also makes a point that based on these patents that are being rejected, which puts Nintendo in a very bad spot currently, that this could also screw up their third patent that they are also using to theoretically ruin Palworld 2. That third one, again, is the summoning mechanic, which if you ask me, of the three Nintendo that, like they're hitting Palworld with, that summoning one is just absolutely the most stupid. Like if Nintendo claims that they own the right to summoning help, that patent has so much potential damage to it that it's actually crazy. Well, you want to play with your friends when you guys game on Fortnite or Battlefield or Call of Duty? Have you maybe considered the fact that you're now breaking the law? You're telling me you want to summon your friends to your party to play a video game? In 2025, you're all criminals. It's confirmed. You're now just breaking the law. How dare you want to play with your friends? How could you not have thought of how this affects Nintendo's pockets? You evil gamers, always thinking about yourselves. I'm joking, obviously, but again, that third patent is just so stupid. I'm just amazed that it was even able to be submitted at all. But Games Fray also made a handy-dandy chart that shows how Nintendo is doing things, as you can see here on screen. Yeah, I know, it's in Japanese. But the point is that Nintendo is taking their patents and then splintering them into new mutant forms to hopefully get the gotchas that they want against Palworld, and that's kind of the whole point of this. And the first number in each patent, in case you didn't know, is the year that it was logged. So they started doing this whole thing in like 2021, and then these patents have been mutated into new forms by 2024, as the chart obviously suggests. And according to GamesFrey, the reason why Nintendo's stupid patent started in 2021 is simple. It takes roughly 18 months from filing your patent to it actually being published fully and being kind of a law, sort of, but not really, but kind of. So why was Nintendo already protecting themselves in 2021? Perhaps they were just, being diligent like any company would. And maybe, and I think this is far more likely, but I'm also being a conspiracy theorist here, I will admit first, maybe Nintendo just found out about Palworld being developed around this time, like behind the scenes. And then in preparation to like destroy Palworld, they just filed it all that early back then so that they could crush them at release and maybe burn their momentum. Because remember that originally when Nintendo bought this lawsuit, they actually wanted Palworld to not be sold until the lawsuit was over, which was crazy, but that was done on purpose to like I said, ruin that momentum. But GamesFrey makes it clear that Nintendo then fast-tracked all their patents following Palworld's, mega release. Which is corporate speak for Nintendo was very, very mad at Palworld coming out at all in the first place. And so that no one can claim this is somehow fake or wrong, as seen here, it's the examination record. And under request for inspection of file records, as you can see, it was put in place in November 2024. But as you can also see at the bottom near notice of refusal, that's very recently, in October 2025. So yes, Nintendo did try to cook, but got cooked instead, and I love to see it. But here's the exact wording by the refusal of the patent office as to why Nintendo is currently getting cooked. It's a bit long, but let me read it for you. It's important, but it says, Reason 1, inventive step. The claim inventions listed below of this patent application shall not be granted a patent under the provision of Patent Act Article 29(2) for the reason that the claimed inventions could have easily been made by persons who have common knowledge in the technical field to which the claimed inventions pertains. On the basis of the inventions described in the distributed publication listed below or made available to the public through electricity telecommunication lines in Japan or other foreign countries prior to the filing of the patent application. The office then uses Ark Survival Evolved gameplay as a means to show that Nintendo cannot reasonably own a patent to something that already existed in other games prior to them trying to create the patent that they had in the first place. I could show you the second document. It's a big word salad, honestly. Here, I'll put it on screen at least, but I'm going to paraphrase it for you because God, it's a lot of writing. But basically, this giant wall of text says that games like Ark allows the player to shoot enemies with like paralyzing arrows, for example, which is done to, incapacitate the enemies, similar to obviously weakening a Pokemon before you, capture it. But then using capture-like mechanics that existed prior to Nintendo's patent, therefore invalidating it, which is great to see. But the reason why this win is just so good is because it proves that Nintendo has now just been delivered a massive blow. And it also means, hopefully anyways, that their other patents now hold zero water either in the long run too. Now the question I think of is, if Nintendo filed a patent for capturing monsters in balls, let's say back in like the 1990s, right? Would they, in theory then, have owned the right, I guess, to that mechanic then? The answer then would be maybe. Probably actually yes. But Nintendo, to their own detriment, made the patent after, obviously, decades worth of video games that had already been created using similar mechanics to their own. So therefore, you can't patent something that already existed in other games, which tells me that the other two patents that Nintendo has fast-tracked could also be thrown out of court as well, because them claiming that they own monster traversal via mounts or switching between air to land, as they say, could be challenged by games like Horizon existing from PlayStation, or Monster Hunter again, The Witcher, Oblivion, Skyrim. I mean, the list goes on. Even the Zelda games, you ride a horse for God's sakes. But what this just tells me that patents would also be thrown out as well, pretty much. And of course, that summoning mechanic, I mentioned Shin Megami Tensei already for a reason. You literally summon demons that you've captured in that game that existed prior to Pokemon, by the way, to fight for you in that game. And it's also turn-based, by the way. Therefore, Nintendo, with that one game alone, that would prove that they can't own the right to summoning creatures if such a concept existed prior to them doing it themselves in the first place. And once you factor in Final Fantasy, or say any JRPG game ever pretty much that exists, you can see how quickly this could in theory fall apart. But this is good news, fellas. It means that Nintendo is getting cooked like a steak in a Michelin star restaurant, and it's glorious to see. And before people say anything, look, I don't hate Nintendo, okay? They do equally good things alongside the bad things with their company too. I call out every company, so it's whatever. But can we all agree, whether you are a big Nintendo fan yourself, that this and what they're doing is just not okay to do? The industry as a whole does not benefit from the top 1% of greedy people ushering in some weird Dominion change to the rules that we all have to follow. You can't own these mechanics, and by God is it good to see that it's not working. Like I said in my very first video on Palworld and Nintendo way back when, I theorize, and I still believe this, Palworld will win this in the end. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, this was thrown out of Japanese court of all places too, by the way. Oh, that is bad, by the way, too. You see, the other whataboutisms being thrown around is that Nintendo could at least win their lawsuit in their home country, which then at least meant that Palworld could not reasonably operate and or be sold its products within Japan as a market due to this lawsuit, which would then in theory give Nintendo full reign like a Yakuza boss or something over their home country. But the lawsuit would hold much less water in, say, North American courts or really anywhere else in the world. But the fact needs to be said that Nintendo lost their patent here in their own home turf, guys. That is bad for them, which means that they now have an even smaller chance of these patents holding water outside of Japan now. They are cooked, is what I'm saying. But this is all great news for everyone that isn't Nintendo, I guess, and actually wants to see freedom of expression, an actual competition get created that can rival and challenge things like Pokemon and more. And let's talk about Pokemon now for a bit too. So there's been some updates to its sales. The game still sold very well, shocker, I know, no doubt about that. It even managed to be the highest physical launch for Nintendo since Tears of the Kingdom, if you can believe it, in the United States alone. Although they do cite Circana, which is but even then it makes sense why Pokemon Legends sold what it did, considering, unlike most third-party games, unless you're called Cyberpunk, I guess, Nintendo's actual first-party offerings are all actually on the key cards that you buy when you do get those games physically, which is a big deal considering that the Switch and Switch 2 don't exactly have the largest internal memory, as we all know. It's a big reason why, personally, I think the whole keycard thing and not having your games on the key cards, but just having the games be digital downloads, is such a huge minus and L for Nintendo players. I mean, this wouldn't be a problem if the Switch ecosystem had big memory storages, but they don't. Which is why, personally, if I were ever to buy a Switch game, or a Switch 2 game, I guess, physically, it would only be games that were 100% on the actual keycard itself. Otherwise, you're kind of just shooting yourself in the foot, all things considered, pretty much. But Pokemon Legends ZA being the biggest physical launch since Zelda in the US, that does make sense to me. It's on the keycard, it takes far less space this way, and it's still a big win for Nintendo either way. That being said, I do think Nintendo needs the competition badly, because ZA or ZA, however the hell you want to say it, it wasn't really it in my opinion. However, it should be stated, as seen here too, that ZA had the lowest main launch in Europe, with the Let's Go games being the next lowest in comparison. Again, it's not a failure by any stretch, but people on Twitter obviously were arguing about this sort of thing like they usually do. But to be honest, the economy is just, not really the best right now. People don't have a lot of money. Too many games have also come out recently too. Like, have you seen all the games that have come out in the last few months? It is way too many, dude. You can't reasonably expect players to be able to buy everything they want, especially when everything is like $70 or I guess $80 USD now. Which, when you price exchange that around the world, that number just gets even more absurd. Either way, if you don't play Legends Z8, you're not missing much either. It's like a 25-hour Pokemon game that barely passes as a premium product at all. And again, another reason why Nintendo hates Palworld is because Palworld is, less than half the price of any Pokemon game on Switch and has, let's be real, more content. But either way, that's what I got for you today. Case in point, Nintendo was losing the battle against Palworld big time, and it is glorious to see it happen, dude. I can only hope that we get more updates, that even more patents have also been rejected in the months to come, because Nintendo, they just need to be humbled, okay? And they can't just be allowed to just swing their meat around like this, thinking that they can get their way just because they're stupid rich or something. And I think when Palworld does inevitably wins this and then shows up Pokemon in the future, it's really only going to be a positive for everyone. And that includes Nintendo fans too, by the way, because it then means that Nintendo needs to then make better, more robust Pokemon experiences to then combat Palworld, and also entice players to not only want to play those Pokemon games, which are going to be more money than Palworld, by the way, but also buy the hardware that is required to play those Pokemon games and access it in the first place too. Either way, interesting times are ahead if you ask me, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, thanks for watching. Oh, and Nintendo, stop being bullies. Thank you.